back to another episode of the Morning Waltz podcast, a space where we hold honest conversations with people rewriting the rules for themselves and the world around them. Today's guest is someone whose voice has been a champion in reshaping the wellness world, not because she's selling a quick fix or an aesthetic, but because she's telling the truth, demanding justice for all bodies and bringing diversity and inclusion to the forefront of the wellness culture. She's also empowering people to find liberation in our bodies. Welcome, speaker, author of the Body Liberation Project, educator, and former fitness and strength coach, Chrissy King. Thank you so much for joining me today, Chrissy.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and chat with you.
Me too. I'm excited to dive in, so let's get into it.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit offline, but you're currently based in New York, in Brooklyn?
Yes, correct. I love it here. I've been here for about 6 years now, almost 6 years.
Okay. Well, I'm curious before we dive in about Chrissy, where you grew up, how you ended up in Brooklyn. So just kind of starting off us off as to a little history.
Absolutely. I'm from Wisconsin actually. So I grew up in Milwaukee, and I spent all of my years, or literally until I moved here, I lived in Wisconsin all of my life. And how I ended up in New York was like a series of events. I say that life just comes at you fast sometimes. So in 2019, my husband at the time, now my ex-husband, and we decided to separate after 11 years together. And so we decided to separate. And then 2 weeks after that, before we even talked to our family or our friends about it, my dad unexpectedly passed away. So that was a lot of grief all happening at once. And I stayed in Wisconsin through the summer. And then I just felt restless. I felt like I really needed to change. I'm like, I just need to do something different. And so I decided that I should try out Brooklyn. And 2 weeks later, I moved here with literally 3 boxes and 2 suitcases, and I said, let's just see what happens. And it was a very tumultuous first month here. If we had time for that, I could tell you that story. But I stuck it out, and here, almost 6 years later, I'm still here, and I love being here.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry for the passing of your father and
Yeah, thank
the
you.
grief. Grief is it's a painful thing, and it's also one of the most powerful things. I feel like it
Yeah,
there is, I always think about the expression, the only way out is through, and to make some
absolutely.
of those changes that you've done, it takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, it does. And I think also, of course, I didn't want any of those things to happen. But when I look back at them, I'm also like, if the things did not unfold in the way they did, I might not have ever made the decisions that I made, which have drastically changed my life for the better. So, you have to go through the grief, but also there's something really beautiful on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to understand a little bit about those. You do an amazing job in your book of describing those pivotal moments that have shaped some of the thoughts that you had learned and the behaviors growing up. And the one that really stuck out with me is the fuchsia shirt. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
I want to kind of dive into some of those pivotal moments early on that really kind of became the focal point of the thinner is better, or that you've got to shrink your body to be happy.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so many things, right? I talk about in my book that I was homeschooled for until I was in the third grade. And so it was just like me and my brother and my sister at the kitchen table doing our work. And it was great. I loved it actually. And then my parents, I think my mom never intended to homeschool us through our entirety of our lives. So we went to this private Christian school in the suburbs. I was the only Black girl in the class. Me and my brother and my sister were the only Black kids in school, actually. And also, I'm very tall now. I'm 5'11", but even when I was that young, I was 5'8" in the third grade. So I was taller than my teacher. I really felt like I stuck out in these really big ways, right? And so I think even then I was like, well, I'm going to be taller than everyone. I'm going to look different than everyone. The things I can focus on are trying to be skinny at least, right? That felt like something that I could control. It was that, and also I can try to be the smartest person in the class. Those are the things that I really focused a lot of my energy on. And I think growing up in the 90s, Tyra Banks and America's Next Top Model, all the diversity that I did see were Naomi Campbell, like these really beautiful thin black women. So I was like, oh, okay, well, if I'm going to be this tall, then I should try to be like a model. And that was and like, I don't even think it was like people in my family saying that. It was just like media, the world. Like I would see these magazines at the store, I would see these things on TV. And I was like, okay, well, if this is the body that I'm going to be in, I need to strive to be like the thinnest, tall, beautiful, waif-like creature that I can be. And it really became a focus for me very early on in my life.
What was the moment that you realized this is not normal, this is not right, and that this is marginalized?
Yeah, so I think that, I started, well, I have journals from when I was like 11 or 12, talking about 10 even, I think, talking about like diet and exercise, and I can only have 300 calories for breakfast, and like tracking these things from a very, very young age. I went on my first like real diet that I like actually remember like intentionally doing when I was like 16, and I did lose a bunch of weight that time. I did like the Atkins diet. I like drove to the bookstore, I got the book, I read it. I followed it faithfully. I lost a bunch of weight. And I went to college, and it was just like this kind of yo-yo effect, right? Like I would lose this weight, I gain it back. I lose this weight, I gain it back. And I was doing this for a very long time. And until my 20s, probably like my mid 20s, I joined a gym and I got serious about like strength training and working out. And I got really into powerlifting, which I loved. I got super strong, which was so much fun. And I remember that I was like the leanest I'd ever been as an adult. I was also the physically strongest I'd ever been as an adult. I was also getting like the most compliments from people I didn't know about my physique that I'd ever gotten. And I was still so, so miserable. And not only that, like exercise, diet, all of that was consuming every area of my life. And I remember I went on this little weekend getaway with my ex-husband's family, husband at the time, and it like stressed me out so much because all I could think about was like, no, I'm not going to be at home. How am I going to monitor like my calories? How am I going to monitor what I'm eating? And again, this is when I was the thinnest body I'd ever been in. And so I packed all of my food for the weekend as I could in this like cooler. And we were at a water park, and so we took like a lunch break for the day. And I stayed in the car to eat my food, had been sitting in the car all day. It was a sad, sad little turkey wrap. And I forgot like I had some fruit or something. I don't know. It was really sad and pathetic. And my in-laws, my family, they were really nice about it. And they like asked the restaurant, they told the restaurant I had like dietary restrictions. Could I bring my food in? And so I did, but like it was also almost over. Like it was such a small portion. And I just sat there at the table watching everybody order food and whatever they felt like eating. And it was coming out and it was smelling so good. And I was like, this is wild. Like, I'm going to spend the rest of my life feeling miserable in my body and getting to the smallest I've ever been, getting to the quote unquote healthiest and strongest I've ever been hasn't changed the way I feel about myself. And if I don't change something, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life and I am miserable.
Yeah. It's not it's not a fun way to be, and when you're on the other side of
No.
that, it's just like I can't believe that that was that was life, and that was how it's all consuming.
No, I was literally, you took the words out of my mouth. It's literally all consuming for me. It was like what I thought about every day. I remember like it controlled so much of my life that every day I was like, if I had other obligations that were gonna like affect the time I was supposed to go to the gym, I would try to figure out how to rearrange my entire day so that I did not miss my workouts. I remember times I worked a corporate job at the time, and I remember times where I would like take doctor appointments during the day so I could fit my work. I wasn't going to the doctor. I was going to the gym so that I could work out because I had to go to like some family event or some really important thing after work. And that was the only time I'd be able to do it, my workout. Like I could not allow myself to miss a workout. It was all consuming. I remember times that I would like go over my macros. I was counting macros at the time. So I'd be like, oh, now I have to go to the gym tonight and like burn some more calories. It literally took all of my mental energy.
Yeah, it does. And it takes a toll. And, physically on the outside, you may look a certain way, but
Yeah.
it's also some of those, you talk about that too, about how externally you fit this mold, but then you're also internally at the deepest, unhappiest level that you've experienced in your life.
100%. I had the worst relationship with food, the worst relationship with exercise. My mental health was like in the drain. Like, yeah, I looked great on the outside and people were giving me compliments, but I was so deeply unhappy inside and it was so all-consuming. And like my body relationship with body image hadn't improved. It actually probably decreased because it was like every time I reached a goal, then I'd find something else I needed to fix, right? It was like this never-ending thing. And it was just really, really bad for my mental health.
Yeah. I I resonate with that so much. There was this one time, this was about 15 years ago. I was doing a bike race here in Philly, and I was in the gym every day and kind of in that obsessive headspace. And when I did this bike race, I ended up getting injured. And I was taken to the trauma center, and everything, I'm fine. I came out on the other side, but I remember being ready for them to take me out back to surgery to repair my ulna that I had just fractured.
Oh my
And I was like,
gosh.
well, how long am I going to be out of the gym? When can I get back into working out? And it's like, that's not where my head should have been. But
Yeah.
it becomes so all consuming. And yeah, it's a wild roller coaster.
It is. It really is.
Yeah. Well, I want to know about the Body Liberation Project.
Yeah.
Where did that grow from? And at what point were you like, I'm done with this shit. Like it's time to change the way that I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think that after I had that experience I talked about on the family trip, I think after that I was slowly like, okay, like this is like for me that was like kind of my like rock bottom moment. I also had like dabbled in some disordered eating patterns that were alarming, right? And I was like, wow, if I don't fix this, we're going to a very dangerous place. And so I think that's when I really was like, I need to take a step back and like make some changes. And I think at first it was like very little things, like, oh, I'm gonna try to stop tracking everything I eat. Again, if you've been tracking everything you eat obsessively for years, you kind of like have a mental idea of what you're eating anyways, right?
Yeah.
So it was like a very slow process. Or I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna put creamer in my coffee that's not fat free. It was like these really small changes. And so I started to do that. But then also I was like, I need to actually work on like my relationship. And I don't even know if I knew to call it body image at the time. I was just like, I need to work on my relationship with myself because I'm deeply unhappy in all of these versions of myself, right? And I think that's the thing about diet culture is it promises you once you get to this body that you want to be in, everything is going to be better. The sun's going to shine and you're going to be happy and you're going to be like, everything about your life is going to be perfect. And I was like, oh, actually, that was all a lie because I'm on quote unquote the other side. I've had that body transformation and I still feel just as miserable. And so I was like, okay, my body can't be the answer to the problems I think I'm having then. And I remember I started just like talking about like body image a little bit online. And I remember I got introduced to the work of Sonia Renee Taylor, The Body is Not an Apology. And I had not actually, like, she just happened to be in my city. I was living in Milwaukee at that time. And I heard about it at the bookstore. I'm like, oh, I should just go. Like, I don't really know what this woman was talking about. And her talk was like so transformational for me. And then I got her book at the event. And it literally was like mind blowing to me and like really opened my mind about body image, but also the intersection of like race and gender and sexuality and how that also affects our ability to feel good in our bodies. And that work was so transformational for me personally. It really took me on my own personal journey of healing and understanding body image. I was also at that time also training clients, and like my clients were all dealing with the same thing, right? They were all coming to me because they wanted to lose weight, but the issues were all around how they felt in their bodies. And so that really took me down the path of like understand like really seeking knowledge about body image and body liberation and how we heal our relationship with our bodies. And I read Fearing the Black Body by why is the name slipping me? Clearing the Black Body. Okay, sorry, the name is slipping me. This is so wild, but I read that book and that helped me understand that like diet culture has its roots in like racism. And so all these things like really started to put together the pieces for me, and really helped me heal my relationship with my body. And I started writing about this more. I started working on this with my clients. And over time, like this, again, this is like over the many years.
Yeah.
I really worked through a lot of my own issues and healed my relationship with body image. And just started talking about it in such a big capacity because I recognize that like this is at the crux of so many of our issues and body wounds and so I was writing about this a lot and I knew that one day I wanted to write a book, but like I didn't really have any plans of that happening anytime in the near future. And I had moved to New York already at this point, or at some point during this whole journey, I moved to New York. And I was talking a lot about body liberation, but also more so I was talking about like the need for diversity and inclusion in the fitness space and like why should we be talking about racism and homophobia within fitness and wellness? And this was like pre-2020, right? So this wasn't a time that it was like really popular yet.
Yeah.
And then 2020 happened and everybody was like, oh my gosh, this is important. And because I had been one of the few people within the fitness and wellness space talking about that, my work really exploded in a major way. And I wrote an article for Self Magazine about what's it like to be a Black body positive trainer. And it actually didn't even talk about me. It focused on three other trainers that I featured in the article. But it kind of went viral. And I got asked to come on the Today Show and talk about it, which was really cool. And after that, a publisher reached out to me about writing a book. And I thought it was like a scam at first. It was not a scam. It actually was real, but and I did not end up working with that publisher for a bunch of reasons, but that kind of sent me down the road of like, oh, maybe like this is the right time to write a book. And it really like I always say that when I talk about the journey to writing the book, I would say that it was like this is woo-woo, but I really felt like the universe is like it's time to write a book because after that happened, like everything fell into place in such a beautiful way. And I got a publishing deal with Penguin Random House and started working on the book. And I say it was the most easeful process publishing. Now on the other side of publishing, I know how not terrible, but I know how challenging publishing is. And so now I'm like, oh, I really had a very easeful experience. And that is not normal. And so that's why I say, like, I feel like the universe is like, okay, it's time for this book to exist in the world.
Yeah. That was your book, your story to tell.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have, and this was a question I was going to ask you towards the end,
Yeah.
but are you looking to, are you doing any more writing? Are you planning on another book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on another book and it's connected to body liberation, but it's literally it's also like liberation beyond the body, right? And just talking about how when we make empowered choices, even the ones that feel really difficult and really challenging and sometimes damn near impossible, how it leads us to live a life that really feels liberated. It makes it and it feels like a life that we created and that we want to embody on a daily basis.
Yeah. Very cool. Do you have a timeline of when that might come out?
I don't know exactly yet. I'm still working behind the scenes on that, but hopefully sooner rather than later.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll keep an
Yeah.
eye out for that. Um, you, I want to go back to kind of when you started doing the writing for the book and the research. One of the things that I was personally shocked by were the stats that you had spoken about, especially with Black women and the rates of disordered eating.
Hmm.
When you learned about that and you were doing your research about the statistics, what were your initial thoughts? How did that hit you?
I mean, it was twofold. In one regard, I was like, oh, this makes so much sense because when I was growing up, I really did not share my body image issues with my family, and I did not share with a lot of my friends. It was something that I really kept internally. And I don't think, I know the reason is because in the world and just like society, eating disorders was seen as like a problem that affected white women, not Black women, right? And so I felt even personally a lot of shame, even around not feeling comfortable in my body, because I felt like that wasn't a problem I should be having. And I definitely didn't feel comfortable talking to people about it. And so I think very culturally also as well, it's like that's not a problem that that's a problem that white women have, not a black girl problem.
Hmm.
And that's not true, obviously. And so I think and then when I read the stats on like how underserved Black and other people of color are when it comes to like eating disorder, even just like getting diagnosis, right? I'm like, oh, this all makes sense, right? And so I think it's challenging still. I think it's great that we're talking about it more and more, but I still think it's a real difficult problem. And even just the simple fact that like if you go to the doctor, Black women are way less likely to even get diagnosed for an eating disorder when they exhibit the same symptoms as white women, right? So I think there's so much bias that we all have that we have to unlearn, including in the medical industry. But the stats were like, oh, this is making sense, and I do understand why I felt so much shame about it and why I felt so difficult talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Was it 17% of clinicians clinicians will set there's a 17% for a diagnosis of disordered
Yes.
eating.
Yes. So
It,
it's really hard. Even when you go to the doctor and you talk about your symptoms, it's really hard to get a diagnosis. And so that's a problem that needs a lot of unlearning across the board, culturally, but also like in the within the industry, the medical industry.
yeah. You talk a lot about the performative allyship
Yeah.
and the deeper work that needs to be done to achieve that collective liberation. What how can people move beyond the performative allyship?
Yes. So it's interesting because I wrote this book. Publishing takes a really long time. So it came out in 2023, but I started working on it in 2021. And I remember that in 2021, like we were really like in the height of like anti-racism, within the country and like this really push for inclusivity. And like I really saw like, especially when it comes to body inclusivity, like brands like really stepping up to the plate. And so I remember thinking that I was like, oh, I don't even know if this is going to be that important because I feel like people are getting it. And now fast forward to 2025, and I feel like we've reverted even farther back than we were then. And so when it comes to this idea of performative allyship, I think the last 4 years have been such a good example of what performative allyship looks like, right? When something seems like popular and trendy, everyone's like all about it. And then as quickly as that trend dies down, then people have like reverted back to exactly the same behaviors as before and in a lot of ways worse. And so that is exactly what I'm talking about in the book about performative allyship. Like when we're talking about correct collective liberation, and like systemic change, it is something that we have to be focused on, regardless if it's popular, if it's not popular, right? It's not something that's just like we do when it's comfortable and when it's trendy. Just like bodies aren't trends. I say this all the time, right? Like we're talking about people's ability to exist in the world free of harm. And so in terms of like how we make that important in our lives is that we never stop doing the work and we never stop talking about it, whether it's popular or it's not popular, right? I still talk about diversity and inclusion. I don't use those words as much because I feel like the words have lost their power now as of the last 4 years, but I still talk about creating environments that feel welcoming and safe for everyone. I still talk about the need to create environments that regardless of what body you exist in, you are free to exist without harm and to be able to navigate the world with ease no matter what your body type is or your skin color or your age or all of these things. The work is always important and never ends. And I think it's so important for all of us, myself included, to always be looking at other people's perspectives, you know? I wrote an article last week on my Substack about community and friendship and like the importance of having community and like that community requires inconvenience. And someone in the comments made a really good comment. And I was like, oh, I completely missed that. They were like, I loved this article. And also, it's really hard for folks who are disabled to sometimes be able to do that. And I was like, oh, I totally missed that. Right. And so it's like, no matter who we are, there's so much work to be done and perspectives that we need to consider, continue to consider. And like, and just recognize like that we are never doing it all. We don't ever understand it all. And the work never ends. And like um the point of living an anti-racist life is not that you get it right all the time. It's that like even when you get it wrong, you're like, oh, I'm gonna correct that behavior and I'm gonna try to get it right next time.
Yeah. It's more
Yeah.
than just a share on Instagram and
Yes.
yeah. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I know that you mentioned about the person who commented on and provided that perspective. So I want to go the other way for a second
Yeah.
with the haters. How do
Oh
you
yeah.
how do you tackle that?
What's really interesting is that over time I've just gotten so much better at not putting my energy into it. I remember, especially when I was writing about this, like early on, I would get so bothered, by negative comments or negative emails or listen, like really, really negative things that people would say. And now I think I've just developed a thicker skin. And then also I recognize that like whenever you're saying something that is like maybe not the popular opinion, you're going to get people who don't like what you talk about. Like there's really nothing you can do about that. And so I've gotten so much better at just like I don't argue with people about things. Like I think there's a difference between someone coming and they want to have a conversation because they want to understand, and that's a very different energy than like I'm just coming here to argue with you because I think you're wrong. And I'm really not here to try to convince people that they should think differently if they are already convinced to think otherwise.
Hmm.
And so I've gotten really good at blocking people. I've gotten really good at ignoring people. I think there are still times that people say things like, for example, someone a couple weeks ago on Substack literally told me I should kill myself, right?
Jeez.
And so it's like when you get those messages, you're like, okay, like it's not even so much that I'm like I take that personally, but it actually makes me think like, wow, there are some really disturbed people in the world, right? Because I don't think there's anything that someone could say on the internet that would make me tell them that they should, eliminate themselves. And so
Yeah.
I think more often than not now, I recognize that they are people having experiences in the world that have nothing to do with me, right? And oftentimes your opinion or your post or your whatever is just the punching bag for whatever they're going through. And so I have learned to just block that person and move on with my day, move on with my life, and not let it get to me. Because also, as a Black woman in the world, people will be anti-black to me. Like there's no way to get around that, right? And so I'm never gonna let those things stop me from sharing the truth that I know I'm supposed to share in the world. So it's more so protecting my own energy, my own peace, and being like, you don't deserve to be in the space and move on with it.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's a really great perspective. I think there's so many times and about shrinking ourselves and making ourselves smaller, and I think that there's and I'm guilty of this. I would say more so younger me, of trying to stay invisible or stay small because I'm afraid of what the reaction I'm going to get or what somebody's going to say. And somebody once said to me that other people's opinions of you are none of your business.
Yes,
And
it's
I
true. It's like that is not my business.
Yeah, you do you
Yeah.
do you. But I think that that's a very strong perspective to have, because otherwise you wouldn't be doing the work that you're doing, and you wouldn't be the voice and championing for the things that you believe in if you let every comment get rent space in your head for free.
Absolutely. And I will say though, like I think initially that takes a lot of courage, right? Because I remember like this is years and years ago when I first started working in the fitness space in kind of an online capacity. And I remember having this time where I was like talking about very just straightforward fitness stuff, right? And then offline, I was having all these other conversations about like feminism and racism and like all these things. And for a very long time, I was scared to talk about those things online, right? For the reasons you're talking about. And I remember I had started working with like this business coach. This was like probably a decade ago now. And she was like very adamant that everybody have a blog. So that's when I started like my website and I started blogging again. And I had written this article and it was entitled "Is Fitness Only for Thin White Women?" And I told her about it. And she was a white woman. I told her about it and she was like, "Oh, you should definitely publish this." And I didn't because I was scared. And so for like months went by and then finally she's like, "Whatever happened with that article?" And I basically told her, I was like, I don't know. I just don't know if I want to talk about that. And she essentially told me, she was like, it's your choice, of course. She's like, but you can be the difference that you want to see, or you can just talk about it behind the scenes. It's totally up to you. And so that really pushed me to publish that article. And I remember when I published that, I was still working at my job and I published it on a day where I had to travel for work. So I was like, I had to be away from the internet. And also, like, no one was reading my work back then, but I was still like terrified. But I had like, a handful of followers. But I remember I published an article. I was away from the internet for like 4 hours and I came back and I was overwhelmed because that was the first article that not only people read, but it was being shared all over the internet. And I was receiving so many messages from women in particular, especially women of color, like telling me, like, thank you so much for putting words to everything that I've been feeling. And I think in that moment I realized that like I did something that was really scary. I'm okay. And also I know that this is has meaning for people and that was like ripping the band-aid off, right? And I think once I was able to face that, then I was able to continue doing it. But I just want to acknowledge that that does feel really hard, especially at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it evolves too as you continue to evolve and you
Yeah.
continue to put yourself out there. There's a really good book that I read one time called The Existential Kink, and
I've never heard of that.
it's based on Jungian psychology, but it really talks about those areas that we keep hidden within ourselves, and how there's shame around it, and shame around certain avenues of wanting to hide those pieces. But once we bring them to the forefront, it becomes less shameful. It becomes less scary.
Yes.
So I think it's really interesting, and I've always admired people who continue to do it day in and day out and put themselves out there. So keep doing that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm gonna have to read that book because that's so true, right? There's so many things that we keep hidden that we feel so much shame about. Yeah.
And when we talk about it and we give it a definition or acknowledge it, it loses that shame and it's
Yeah.
almost like shadow work, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
How do you take care of you mentally, physically? What's your routine to keep you grounded?
Yes, my mornings are so important to me. I don't look at my phone in the morning. I I think my basically my morning routine is just like journaling, meditating. I've been really into tapping lately. And at first I thought I was like, that's not gonna do anything, but I oddly feel really like calmed by it. I don't know if it, and so I don't know if you've ever done something and you're like, is this just my mind playing tricks on me? But like either way, I don't know, I like it, so I'm gonna keep doing it. So I do that, and then so it's like meditating, journaling, tapping. Then I usually have a little coffee, read a little bit, and then I like ease into like, okay, let me look at my text and see if there's anything I need to respond to right away, and then emails, and then like get into the day. And so that's really, really important for me. I'm trying my best to spend less time on social media and less time scrolling. Some days are better than others. I also spend a lot of time just walking outside, just clearing my thoughts and just like by myself. And then my nights, I think before I go to bed, it's always like important for me to have like at least an hour of like time away from like, either the TV or the screen. And so I'll usually read, and I'll usually do like a short meditation and tapping session before I go to bed, just like really breathe to just calm myself into, sleep. But I think th those things have been really important for me. And I think that like there's just so much happening in the world every single day. And so I think it's really a balance of like staying informed with what's happening in the world and then also keeping myself grounded, doing what I can, to create change and then keeping myself really grounded. So that's just been something I've really been focusing on. And I think also just like spending time with people that I can laugh with and have fun with and be myself with and feel like at peace with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Going back to the article you wrote about community,
Yeah.
it's
It's
so
very
important.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you tapping as in tap dancing?
No, okay, no,
Okay. I
sorry.
was
Let me
like,
clarify that.
yeah.
Tapping, no. So it's called EFT tapping.
Oh.
Yeah, so my favorite person to follow about this is on YouTube, this gentleman named Brad Yates. He's like an OG in the ta EFT tapping world. And so for people who don't know, and it's what does it stand for? Frequency, energetic frequency, something. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. Look it up on YouTube though.
I will.
Brad Yates, and he has like at least 1,500 videos. So sometimes I will just like if I'm feeling I don't know, say I was feeling lonely one day, I would just put in Brad Yates tapping loneliness. And he has like a video. I've never typed in a topic that he did not have something about. And so basically it's like you're repeating these affirmations while tapping like different pressure points in your body.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really, and you just like repeat what he's saying and you tap along with him. And I don't know if it's just a placebo or not, but either way, it's the best placebo. Like I literally love it. And I feel so calm afterwards, and especially if I'm like feeling really like energized about something or activated, I should say, about something. I'm like, okay, whatever the issue is, let me go look at this. And then I find the video and I'm like, oh, I feel so much better after I do it.
Yeah. That there's
Yes.
something incredibly powerful when you can find something that you connect with that just kind
Yeah.
of opens something up. So I went through several yoga teacher trainings over the course of my adult life here, and the most recent one that I did was my 300 hour, and the woman who facilitated it, she introduced us to something called thinking body feeling mind.
I don't know that.
And it's just you're literally just you might start off on your back and you're swinging your arms and you're swinging your legs and
Oh,
you're just opening up your body in a way that just somebody might walk in and be like, what are you doing?
you
But
doing?
it feels so good. Like, so I'll lay on my floor and I'm just swinging my legs and like wrapping my arms over my body, but I'm like, I feel so much better when I do it.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that.
And
That's
I think,
amazing.
yeah, there's a studio. The woman who started this movement, her name is Linda Yak, but she's in Santa Monica and has a studio
Okay.
there. So, yeah, Shout out to my friend Charlotte. No.
I love
Yeah.
that.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the younger generations that are coming up. We're hearing a lot about skinny talk, and
Yeah, it's terrible
that's
over there.
it is.
Yeah.
And somehow, I don't have TikTok anymore. I've taken that off of my phone, but I was getting targeted for these very problematic accounts, and I'd be like,
Yeah.
report, report, report. But what advice and awareness would you share with the younger generations that?
I have so much concern for younger generations, just because I know how much I struggle with body image. I did not have any social media, right? That did not exist.
Yeah.
And TikTok is really, first off, it's very addictive, right? And kudos to you for taking off your phone. I'm not there yet. I need to get there, but I'm not there yet. Kudos to you for that, though. It's so addictive. And not only that, like it targets right, anything you watch, right? So if you watch one video about weight loss, then all of a sudden you're getting video after video after video about weight loss. And I worry for young adults who don't have the capacity to understand like this is not content that you should A be watching and to consuming, right? And like in taking these ideas. And I don't, it's weird when it comes to advice. I don't know what to say because I think the best advice is not be on TikTok, especially as a young adult. Is that practical though? I don't know. Because I just don't think that when your frontal lobe isn't fully developed, I don't think that you have the capacity to understand like this is not, for one, not real. Everything you see on the internet is not real, right? And then secondly, you are seeing like the rosy side of it. Like, oh, you're not seeing that person who probably actually has an eating disorder and like what's really happening in their lives behind the scenes, right? You're not seeing those things. And I just see so much harmful stuff. And even me, like I'm actively saying, not interested, not interested, block, block, block. And I still like get all this content. I'm like, how did this get here? You know,
Yeah.
very, very harmful things. I don't know. I just really think the answer is like we shouldn't be on TikTok. And
Yeah.
especially I don't think kids should be on TikTok. It's too addicting. There's too much information that is harmful. And I just think it's really hard to be intaking the information and not be impacted by that. And in fact, I even know for myself, when I'm like having a bad body image day, because by the way, no matter how much work you do, those days still show up. I'm like, oh, I've been scrolling too much. Like I can see the impact of like how much time I've been spending online to how I'm feeling. And so I think the best thing is like we just can't spend our time and our energy and our attention on these devices. And I wrote about this yesterday on one of the app platforms, I don't know, Instagram, I think, because there's this new Kim Kardashian released a new face mask thing yesterday. And I'm like, what are we doing? You know, and it's just like, and the reason I decided to make a video about it is not just because obviously it's tragic that she made that, but because of two things. Number one, a device coming from a family who has surgically altered every part of their body, like clearly the mask is not the reason for their jawline, right? But aside from that, when I saw it first, I was like, I actually, I thought maybe it was fake because you never know what's real on the internet or
I
not. But
know.
I went to the website. Not only is it real, it was already sold out. It sold out in one day, and I'm just like, wow, people are like, yeah, I'm gonna go buy this thing that I'm gonna sleep in every day because somehow that's going to fix my jawline. And I just feel like we have completely like lost touch with um I just think we've lost touch with so when it comes to bodies and like what's important, like people are so hungry and thirsty for some fix to themselves, right? And we have reverted in such a terrible way. And it's just really, really, and these are, I'm sure, a lot of adults buying this, right? So I'm like, if adults are like, oh yeah, if they're falling for the gag, right? Like, of course the kids are going to fall for the gag. So it's just really, really concerning, honestly.
It is, and it's almost programming you to kind of be like, oh gosh,
Yes.
well, oh my gosh, do I have jowls? Do I have laugh
Yes.
lines? And then all of a sudden, yeah, you're down the rabbit hole of a plastic surgeon account and this and that.
Yes. And before you know it, you're scheduling a surgery to go to Turkey. Like, what is happening, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. I can't even get over that. This is, I mean, it's just another. I can't believe it sold out.
I know.
Oh
That's
my
what really put
gosh.
me over the edge. I was like, oh, it sold out in one day. Okay. Because
Yeah.
for me, and this is why it's so important, like even moments like that remind me of how much we need to keep doing the work and talking about these things. Because when I saw that, I mean, I'm like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Like, you want me to give you $48 to to sleep in this thing that I'm sure doesn't even, I don't even know how we put that over my head. Like, there's so many, like logistically how this work. But secondly, I'm like, again, I know that whatever jawline you have did not come from wearing that device. Like, why would I fall for that? Like, clearly I'm not. And also, having a snatched jawline is really not an important factor in my life. And I talked to in the video yesterday, I'm like, especially in the world where like so many truly concerning things are happening, like my jawline is probably at the bottom of the list, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm just like, why would anybody ever fall for that? But then I'm like, oh, actually, lots of people fall for this in massive, large amounts. And so it's just a reminder there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have a couple more questions.
Yeah.
Where you're at today, and when you think back to your younger self, your 10-year-old in her fuchsia shirt,
Yeah.
where is this where you had hoped you would have landed? Did you always have a desire to want to be able to connect with people and be an advocate and a voice for championing for social justice and just being out there? What I guess the question is, what did you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah. Actually, I think my 10-year self would be really happy in a lot of ways. When I was really young, and I still am, like I loved reading and I loved writing. Like I would, especially when I was homeschooled, because like as soon as I finished my work, then I was done for the day. And I would literally go to the library to get books to read, and then I would write stories. It was like my favorite thing. So I think 10-year-old me would be really, really happy to know that I wrote a book. And I think that when it comes to like advocacy work, I don't think I thought of it in that way when I was younger, but I do know I was always really concerned about things. I remember like I first watched this documentary about when I was like really young about sweatshops, and I was like livid about it. I just like could not believe that this was happening in the world. And I remember getting into an argument at a very young age with one of my mom's friends because she was like trying to do like a, I don't even really know, I was so young, but something about a clothing line. And I just remember she said she could get the shirts from China, and I was livid. I'm like, do you know what sweatshops are? Like I'm a child talking to an adult. Like, are you aware of sweatshops? And I remember she did not take it kindly because I probably didn't say it appropriately, but I was 10, like whatever. And so I just remember very young, I was always really like passionate about social justice issues and the injustice happening in the world. So it's actually not totally surprising
Yeah.
that this is what I'm doing now. But interestingly, I think that 10-year-old self would probably be a little bit surprised. And I think because when I was younger, I was so concerned about like what's the right thing to do, right? And so I remember thinking like I have to go to college, which I did. I did all that. I have to go to college, I have to get married, I have to have kids, I have to have a really nice house. Like I had this idea of like what it meant to be a good adult and a good person to society. And also just like respectability politics, right? Like I wanted to be a good Black person, right? So I'm like, this is what you do to be a good person. And so I think 10-year-old self would be surprised that I followed all those things. And then I decided actually that's not what I want. And I got divorced when I was 33. I decided not to have kids. I decided to be child free. I essentially started over when I was 33 and moved to, another part of the country. I think she would be surprised, but also I feel like I'm really honoring my younger self in a way that I didn't know how to do when I was younger, in the sense that like I get to decide what kind of life I want to create, and I don't have to follow like social conditioning. There's no such thing as what it means to be a quote unquote good Black person, right? And I don't have anybody to impress in this world. And so I think 10-year-old self would be really, really proud of me.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you.
I wanted to talk to you too about the childless by choice because
Yeah.
I think that is such a empowering statement to be able to say I made the conscious decision not to have children, and that
Yeah.
terrifies so many people and
Yes.
it really triggers people.
Yes, that too.
Yeah. So if I may ask you, I
hmm
feel like we could have a whole conversation about that because
Yeah.
I'm in a similar mindset. I want to know at what point you were like, hey, I'm letting go of all of those social expectations that are expected of a woman.
Yeah, so I got married when I was really young. I got married when I was 22, which in hindsight, way too young to get married. Not because I didn't, and not because I chose a bad person or anything like that. I just think you don't know who you are at 22, right? And so I remember getting married at 22. I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna have 4 kids. My partner agreed. Like everything was like, yeah, this is perfect. And then we just were living life. We never really talked about kids. And then I remember when we were getting close to 30, the conversation came up. Not like, oh, we should start now, but I don't remember how the conversation came up. But I remember my partner at the time saying like, something about like 4 kids. I'm like, oh, you that I laugh because like, oh, you're still talking about 4 kids. Like I was like thought we were having a moment. We were not having a moment because he very much was like, of course we're having 4 kids. I'm like, no, we said that we were 22. Also, we're 30 now. If we were gonna have 4 kids, I think we should have already started. And that became this like start of a long conversation about kids. And the more and more I thought about it, I was like, there's never been a day in my life where I woke up and was like, I wish I had a child to take care of. And I also my sister had a son when she was relatively young, and my sister and I are really really close. I helped her a lot with her son, which I loved being able to be there to support her. But I think seeing it that up close, I was like, oh, this is a 24/7 job. This actually never ends. And the more and more I thought about it, I was like, I actually don't want to be a caretaker for another human being in that capacity. And I think I show up for people in my life in a lot of ways, but I don't want to have the sole responsibility for raising a person. And ultimately that's why my husband and I separated, which is a really hard decision as well, but I know it was the right decision because people always like, oh, you would have been a great mom. And it's like, I think I have the capacity. I know I could have been a great mom, but would I have been a happy mom? Would I have been fulfilled? I don't think so. It's just not something that I desire for myself. And then I think about all the time that, my great 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 grandmother was an enslaved person, right? My great great grandma was a sharecropper. Like my grandparents didn't finish elementary school. Do you know what I'm saying? My parents finished high school. I'm the first person or the first generation in my entire family line to even go to college. And so I think about the fact that like I have the autonomy and the power to make choices that nobody in my generation, my ancestrals in my ancestral history ever had the choice to decide to do. The first person in my family to just be single, child free, live alone, get to make these decisions for how I want to live my life. And that feels so empowering. It feels so freeing. And I feel so, I would lucky, I think, to even have the opportunity to make those kind of choices and decisions. And I feel like, I know this is going to sound wild to some people, but I'm like, no, I'm resting in a way that my ancestors never got to rest. And I love that for myself.
I love that. I feel like we have to end on that because I think yeah. I think it's just that breaking the generational and stepping outside of what may have been traditional in a family norm or all the things. So I thank you for sharing your story and for
Okay.
being just very candid with me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah,
I had such a good time talking to you.
me too. I'm like, if I ever am in Brooklyn, we should go grab
Please, I would
lunch
love
or
that.
coffee.
I would
Yeah,
love that.
I would love that
Yeah.
too. Whereabouts in Brooklyn are you?
I'm in Bed-Stuy.
Okay, my one of my very
Yeah.
best friends lives in Sunset Park, so I try to get there
Okay.
as often as I can. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Christy, thank you so much. It was so nice meeting you and connecting and just having this conversation.
Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed it.